Hello teacups, what's brewing? Welcome back to the channel. We've had some interesting developments because I am taking information from kind of different points this week. I'm not going to be doing a straight react, it's more just recapping some information. Excuse me if I don't have every little thing at the moment. It's been a busy week, going to be a busy weekend. But Foodie is no longer moving into the house. Who could have foreseen that coming? I have a little bit of confusion regarding a lot of the stuff that is going on with the house. Probably because there have been so many lies told or misdirections or I want to keep it private, you guys. It's been really hard to follow. Oh, sorry about that cut. I sat down and then I realized as I went to reach for my coffee cup that I hadn't made any. It's like, we do a lot of things here in the teapot. We're not doing Chantal without caffeine. So anyway, confusion because unsurprisingly she's not a particularly reliable narrator, but we've heard a few different versions of what the house was. Originally, of course, infamously, it was a mansion and it was 3 bedrooms, so she was going to have an extra room because there was a lot of speculation about it. And although she hadn't told us exactly what she was spending every month in rent, we got the impression that it was more, and she had put the figure 5,000 on first and last month's deposit, rent, whatever you want to say. And then over this last week, she mentioned it was like a 5 to 6 bed, and she confirmed she was paying 3,600 Canadian per month as rent, because I was super busy at the time, but I wanted to make a video right there and then. I was like, 3,600, what is wrong with you? Because like she already spends exactly what she has. Yeah, she overspends. She'll spend all her money every month and then be kind of broke at the end of it and then waits for her next paycheck. That's the cycle she goes through. So to have a channel she's planning on uploading in less and then have rent that is nearly twice what she pays now just seemed like a really dumb idea, but we'll continue. There was also some mention at some point that other people were living there, and I just didn't quite know what was going on there, because it made me think of, in the UK, it's very common with the larger Victorian homes that are very common in cities, that people will buy them and they'll split them into separate houses, or they'll have flats downstairs and a flat upstairs. So you split a house into 2 or however many. Yeah? And I was like, well, is that it? Is she renting a 3-bedroom section of a larger house? Is that what's going on? But that wouldn't make sense with the idea that, oh, well, you can let to buy, which was a talking point at one point, because 2 different sets of people couldn't let to buy. And I'm not saying the other set was, or if the other set even exists, but that was the only logical way I could see there being other people living there, because she was leasing the place. There was also some talk with her current planned trip to Kuwait, how she had told Pete that no, my cats need attention, and then I got the impression she didn't trust Pete to do that, even though she doesn't really do that herself, or care for the cats properly herself, I would say. My opinion. That his mom was going to come stay, which was also very puzzling to me, because I was under the impression that Pete's mom had downsized into somewhere smaller but had somewhere herself. And so, I mean, I suppose she could come and stay for a short period of time to help him out. I could see that happening. But then she'd also be running her house. And it definitely could happen, but the practicalities of it was something that were a little bit confusing to me. It didn't make the most sense. But I don't know, like Pete does sometimes need a bit more help with his depression. Maybe his mom didn't want him to live by himself. I don't know. So that was going on. And we got a lot of different stories about what the setup of the place was, which of course now is all moot because apparently the owners of the place have pulled out of leasing it from her. So we do have the censored version of the letter that she was sent, not the letter, the email/message. And we've got 3 different ways of looking at this here, and all of them could be relevant in the sense of we don't know if this whole housing story was a lie she made up, which her lie, I guess, because it's a question of how much of it was a lie, how much of it was a scam, how much of it was just fabrication altogether, and none of this was real. And you can go on any of those ideas. I would say that when she came online, for all the fact that she was incredibly high, and that might be impacting her mood at that point, because she got angry during the live and was like, prove that I'm high in a hijab, and I'm like, honey, the fact that you can't hear yourself talk right now, the fact that you are literally slurring, that every 3 seconds she's coming over with her hand over the mic, the camera, for probably a smoke break, I'm guessing. It was not hard to pinpoint the fact that she was under the influence of something, and what that something was, I will allow you to speculate. So her calmness could have been a couple of things. It could have been that she said she went that morning to do some last minute things and everything had gone smoothly and no one had mentioned anything. And then later she received this. Now, my heart is kind of still in scam. She claims not. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself anyway. But she said she received this text. It was a text and an email. They sent it simultaneously right after she had sent the message that she had sent rent. And for me, that is extremely suspicious timing, especially when you've literally just been there and they were like, sign the lease on Saturday. And I'm like, if you've had the lease this whole time, why wouldn't you just sign it? Because that would ensure your claim to the place. And if they're saying, no, don't sign it yet, just bring it Saturday, and then you're sending rent to them early, and suddenly directly after you send rent, you're getting this, because she said she sent them a message going, oh yeah, no, I paid. I know there's a clip of her saying previously, oh, I paid the rent. I think there are moments when she uses like the rent and the deposit kind of interchangeably, and that might be also contributing to the confusion we're having here. So I don't necessarily think it's a lie that she paid rent that day. I just think at some point she may have mistermed it. Now, luckily, she was able to go into her online banking and just reverse the transfer, which is very lucky for her because a lot of places won't allow you to do that once you've sent money. And apparently, according to the short, she was able to go and get her deposit back. So she's not out any money, but she's using that idea as, well, because I didn't lose money, it wasn't a scam, when the timing seems really sus and her ability to claw back her money doesn't change the intent of someone who was trying to take it, which someone in her chat does actually point out when she's talking about it. But the letter itself just seems weird. So I've got a screenshot of the thumbnail she put up. And she didn't put this up on her community tab, I don't think, which I think is on purpose. She wanted to make it difficult to read clearly. Chantal, we just learned about serious problems because of which we will not be able to go and spend winter in wherever as we planned, so we cannot rent the house. Now, again, this was supposedly meant to be for a year, so where's this winter coming from? When people talk about a house sitting and then she willfully misinterprets that as, well, any rental is technically house sitting, the reason people were asking is because if they are essentially, there is a word for people who winter somewhere warmer. I want to say snowbirds, but I feel like that might be the opposite direction. I don't know. But there's a term for that. Then it wouldn't have been a whole year, and it never would have been a whole year. And especially if her story of other people lived there is true, it didn't seem like a rental. They were leaving their cats. It was all a bit strange. So apparently now, let's just keep reading. I'm just going to go to wherever on my own, and the other person will stay here with censored, while I'm assuming it says I go back to wherever. Yeah, so the plan is for the family to split for the winter and deal with whatever this was. It's very unfortunate, but we have no choice. I feel very sorry to let you down at this stage in the game. Let me know if you can come tomorrow on Friday so I can give you back your dollars. And I'm assuming, because she's covered up a load of information, that it's saying, the key to the mailbox and all the other things that they've maybe exchanged with her. Again, my sincere apologies. So it's a very vague letter. It's essentially someone coming up and wanting the day off and you asking why and them saying personal reasons and not giving any other information. Yeah, they don't owe her the story of their emergency, but at the same time, She apparently, according to her, was a tenant. And this was apparently, according to her, a surprise that they could not foresee. And yet she got this message right after she sent rent, and she was told, no, sign the lease later. Usually the first thing you want to do as a landlord is get a lease signed, because that then makes it official, not the payment of money like she thought. Like, you need to have a contract of some kind. And this again goes to, I don't understand why she's so calm. I don't know if maybe she received this slightly earlier and then had time to freak out and had time to think of a plan, because she says herself the first thought she had was, oh God, the haters are going to think they were right, because of course that's her first concern. And I can see her maybe trying to hide her emotional response there, and being as high as she was probably helped that a little bit. But I would be in much more of a state than she was, emotionally speaking, if this had happened to me, which tells me either she knew all along this was a terrible idea, and the thought of actually paying that much rent and all the stuff that reaction channels have been saying, as much as she would rather shoot herself in the head than admit to agreeing with any of it, all of it was true, and she realized what a terrible idea it was. But she can't agree with reaction channels, so she's not going that route. But she might just be slightly relieved that she doesn't have to do this anymore, because it was a pretty bad idea that she got really invested into really quickly. Secondly, she's glad that she's out of it, because her plans for Kuwait have now apparently been solidified and booked. And so now that she's going, trying to find someone to stay there, because they did agree to look after the cats and all the things, was going to be more problematic. And I say it was a little strange that Peter's mom was brought into the picture, but who else would she have asked under those circumstances, And it could have been that actually, no, she was completely invested and she was very upset about it. And again, because she doesn't want to show emotion, because then the haters will be right, she's not making a big deal about it. But I don't think that would last. I think over the next few days, we would get more of the truth on that situation. But there's no way, if that were the case, that she'd be able to maintain her emotions, because that's not a strength she has. And again, it's super sus that she got this email as soon as she sent rent. But according to her, she's got all her money back, so no harm, no foul. I don't know if actually, no, that wouldn't make sense. I was going to say, it was so late though. I'm not amazed because it's Foodie, but I would be amazed because any normal person would do this. Having a tenancy taken out from under you is something I would fight, because if you have to move within the next few days, that's really, really late. And they say, I'm sorry it's so late in the game. If she actually had gone through the motions of informing her landlord the way she was supposed to, that she was leaving, other people could have already rented that place. They could have just kicked her out and said, look, you gave your notice, we've got new tenants. Now, it seems like she didn't make it clear to the landlord that she has now, her current place, the villa, that she was leaving, and they were quite surprised. So they wouldn't have had time to move forward in finding a new tenant yet. And especially with all the mess and everything in an apartment, they couldn't come in and take pictures. They wouldn't have been able to come in and check. I know she said she doesn't have a deposit, but check for damage, make it rental ready. Like, she was very selfish in how she treated her current landlords at the villa, even if it is an agency or whatever covering it, because you need time to be able to do those things. But I would have been angrier being put in her position, because she said she had another offer and doesn't say very much, but now she's saying that she was staying in the villa. So I don't know what's going on there. It's all very convoluted, I think purposefully so. But I find how she's emoting these events, given that she has no control over her emotions usually, to be very, very suspicious. There is something that we don't know that we should know at this point. And I think she was more involved in the decision for this to not happen than she's necessarily giving us information for, or she was so worried about it actually happening and getting it that she's just glad it doesn't have to, because it's weird that she's not more upset. There was some talk as well about discrimination, because of course, apparently, and again, why would you make this choice? She went to them while wearing her hijab and told them all the plans she had to go to Kuwait and move in Pete's mom and do the things. And I'm like, I could understand, like, if we're going to say, okay, it wasn't a scam, was just a perfectly lovely couple who were going away for a while, who were renting their house or rooms in their house or whatever it was. Personally, I don't think it was a good idea to share all those plans, because that's concerning. So if the final facts are that this was all real, it was never a scam, and Foodie just kind of shot herself in the foot by being Foodie, then this becomes a case of, well, you reap what you sow. Yeah? Do people discriminate against people in hijabs? Yes. Would the landlord have been massively concerned about it? I feel like no, they seemed happy with her according to her story. She's not always necessarily aware of how people are reacting. She tends to filter it through her brain a little bit. But I would say the conversation about, like, yes, I'm renting it, but I'm not going to be here and I'm going to move in this other person that you don't know, that would have been a lot for any landlord to take. So last minute changes. She mentioned something about the son, and she had said that they were aware of her YouTube channel, which none of us believed, because we were like, if they saw her YouTube channel, they never would have agreed to rent for her. Not a chance. And then she admitted that she had told them she was a plus size model on social media. And, you know, instead of them knowing and having seen her channel, they're aware that she does social media. And maybe they didn't look it up, and maybe they now have. We don't know, because she doesn't know. If there are more details to be had here, I'm sure she won't be able to keep them quiet, and we'll be able to piece together a better story or a better understanding of the story in the next coming days, I would imagine. There's a little bit of outrage as, why would you laugh at me? Why would you be happy if it was a scam? And I'm like, it's not so much laugh as, when you're so absolutely determined to paint yourself as a target and hand people arrows, you can't be surprised that people, having warned you, you're going to get shot, are not sympathetic when you get shot. I don't wish harm on people, but by God, if you're going to work this hard to put yourself in harm's way, don't be surprised when people say, I told you so. She seems to have gotten off quite lightly with it all, but don't be surprised. She would have to stay in her new apartment. Sorry, I've got some notes and I've just jumped to one. She admitted she hadn't done any packing at all. So that's why when she says, oh, I'm having a problem with the portrait on my camera. Funny enough, the portrait problem doesn't bother her when she's streaming in her car. She just likes the fact, and she admitted it, that it doesn't show as much of her background. So she's on portrait when she's in a room now, which means the house, oh, for all the state we've seen in the house, I'm betting it is the worst it has ever been. Because she hasn't packed, but she has been clearing crap. So there's going to be trash everywhere, because also in her head, well, I'm leaving this, so if it's a mess, it's a mess. That house is going to be dire at the moment. There doesn't seem to be many other talking points. Obviously, the move and Kuwait are the main ones. Kuwait seems to be trucking along. She has apparently booked a hotel, which if she's staying for 2 to 3 months is going to be very expensive. Hotels are very expensive. When I was looking for one for a longer stay over the summer, I was just like, I'm not willing to put that amount of money in it. It's insane. So I'm not surprised she has to do it, because she wouldn't be allowed to stay with a man that she wasn't related to in some way. But it's going to be a big old chunk of change, which might also be one of the reasons she's slightly relieved that she's not going through with the mansion anymore. But she said she's still going. I don't know if she's booked a flight. I know there was talk about her booking either business class or first class or whatever to be more comfortable, which I think she would have to do. But it's going to be an interesting trip. There was a conversation while she was sitting in a car one day where she was saying, you know, I don't think I'm going to need the coping mechanisms, speaking about like the weed and the alcohol and all the other things she uses to cope. And I think, all my problems are because I'm in the Western world. Essentially, she didn't quite say it like that, but that was the impression she gave. And I was like, and then she's like, oh, I'm adaptable. And I'm like, no, you're not. You do not live a flexible life. You barely experience the life that you were born into. She is not flexible in the slightest. And I tell you now, I have spent my entire adult life moving from country to country for various jobs. I've had some jobs where I've had good experiences. I've had some jobs where I've had not so good experiences. I've lived predominantly in Asia and the Middle East, but I have a lot of experience moving to different countries and different cultures. And I take culture shock seriously, because although I've got a good handle on the things I do to help me with culture shock, and that was one of the things, was getting my apartment ready, having a home I can go back to, that I don't feel kind of, and this isn't done yet, and it gives me a sense of home rather than housing. And that's important to me. It's very important to my ability to settle in, to create my own space quickly. Yeah? When you travel to somewhere so unfamiliar, you have to take that seriously, because even as an experienced traveler, I struggle with that sometimes. And that's why I have those routines in place. So to sit there and be like, oh no, all my problems are because I'm actually living in a Western society and they're going to be fine when I get there. My God, the reality of that is going to slap her in the face so very hard, so very quickly, because she is not prepared, or she has convinced herself that all her problems are incidental to her location. And she is actually a very strong, very independent person who is very, very flexible and would do really well in a new culture. And I don't think those things are true at all. I think it's going to be a big old shock to her, because as someone with experience, it can still sometimes be a big old shock to me. So I don't know what she's thinking right there, but I think she's going to have a breakdown extremely quickly if she makes it to Kuwait at all. Yeah? I know, who is it? Oh, what's the name of her channel? The older lady that Chantal hates that lived in Kuwait. Yeah? I'm so sorry, I don't remember. But she has experience in Kuwait from, I want to say, about 30 years ago. Now, it's true that the Middle East has progressed in the areas that you visit in the Middle East. So I'm talking like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Kuwait, the visitable places. There has been a lot of progress since she got there. I'm not going to say for the population, because I can't experience what they experience, but for foreigners in those countries, certainly. And Chantal will get a lot of passes for the fact that she's foreign and potentially ignorant, in that things that she does that aren't allowed would probably be explained before they're punished. So she still has to be careful. I think if she's going to film and things, social media is a very sensitive thing in the Middle East. It's one of the reasons when I have done vlogs, I've been very careful to keep the camera on me, or to try and show you surroundings when people aren't in frame. Here, it's a little less of a concern than Saudi Arabia, but it's still a respect thing, because the idea of having your image up online is quite a sensitive one. I do not see her being sensitive about that at all if she gets there. But then also, if she gets there, it's going to be, the reality of it is going to be such a shock. We might not see her recording, just because she wouldn't be able to hide it. She wouldn't be able to hide that she wasn't doing that much. And yes, there are malls in Kuwait, and there's Kuwait City seems to be, if you're a foreigner and you're moving to Kuwait, most of the, I don't want to, interest, I suppose, most of the features are within Kuwait City in terms of living day to day. I'm sure there are places you can go visit around, but most of the main metropolis of Kuwait City is where the action's at. Yeah, and she's not going to explore that city particularly, I don't think. She might go to the mall, she might be like, oh my God, you guys, there's Krispy Kreme, oh my God, it's TGI Fridays. But a mall is a mall at the end of the day, and you can enjoy it, and it can be different, and it can be interesting to see what makes it internationally and what doesn't. Like, there are lushes here, and I know she was very excited about that. But sometimes there is comfort in how unchanged something remains internationally. IKEA is the same in every single country. You go to an IKEA, you know what you're going to get. And frequently, when like my friend in Canada was moving and I was moving at the same time, we could literally compare the same items because they are consistent across the board and across the world. That can be interesting to a point, but not 3 months interesting. And if this ends up being really bad, if this ends up being your passport is now gone and you will do what you are told, do you really think she's going to have the wherewithal to make it to an embassy and plead for help? Like, once she's there, she is there, and she is at the mercy of whoever is meeting her. But again, when we talk about things not quite being right, it's not quite right. If she's going, no. And I know she's been saying, no, I'll get the ring when I get there. Oh, we'll get married over the internet. Oh, we'll do whatever. She's going on a tourist visa. I actually thought that the tourist visas were closed at the moment. I had done a quick search and it had said they were, but I feel like maybe that information was out of date because I looked again and it does look like they're open. So it does seem like she can physically get there. But would I trust anything once I did? No, I wouldn't. But as she likes to remind us, she will do what she's going to do and we got nothing to do it and F us. So I guess we're just along for the ride. I mean, I thought she'd go to Cuba, but then I also thought the trip before she was going to do. So sometimes she surprises us, but Cuba is Cuba and it's not Kuwait, you know? So is she really going to get on a plane and go that far? I don't know. It'd be content. I'd be here watching it if she did. It'd be content, but I don't know, with it being such a big trip for her and her intentions when she gets there. We've seen her sobbing in the middle of the night because she feels like she's going to mess everything up because her insecurities are real as much as she tries to bravado her way out of them. And I don't know if, even if this weren't an incredibly suspect situation and she had been in a long-term relationship and she'd already met the guy and all of that, I don't know if she'd be capable of doing this trip. But it's not very far in the future. It's apparently happening after Christmas, so I guess we'll just wait and see. There's nothing else we can really do. Hopefully she learns the difference between Dubai and Doha at some point, because she seems convinced she's going to Dubai when actually she's transferring through Qatar. But again, we'll see if that's a surprise for her, if she realizes. And yeah, I guess we'll just keep on keeping on. Okay, everyone, I'm sorry if that was a little bit convoluted. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and there's lots of little pieces of information from over the last few weeks. So if it was a little bit confusing, I apologize. It's a bit confusing in my brain, which is why it's this way on camera. All right, but thank you for being here anyway, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.